At every turn in her life, every time she came across a failure, she was kind of forced to immigrate. And this was one of those big pivotal moments for her, was the failure of this book to be published.
No one else, I think, would have, in their right mind, touched this book, given the politics at the time. I'm Jessica Stark, and I'm an art historian. I study the history of photography. I was drawn to the fact that she was a woman. I was interested in her as a person. I found out later that she had a really compelling life story, but initially, because I just had the negatives, the visuals of them were so stunning that I kind of wanted to know more about her. And then once I dove into who she was and started learning about her trajectory and her training and her politics, I just kind of fell in love with her as a person. So Anne was born into like a middle-class Jewish family in Berlin, in Charlottenburg, in 1914. She got her first camera when she was like 15 or 16 years old, and she decided to go into training, become a photographer basically. And then Hitler comes to power. She's Jewish. So in 1933, her mentor flees the country and basically tells her that she should do the same. So she applies for an updated passport and she leaves. Her parents had both died, so she was an orphan when she left Berlin. And she arrives in Tel Aviv, and then for the next 4 years, she's basically an itinerant emigre, moving around from country to country. And when she's there, she just works as a photographer. She does some commission portraiture. She also helps to kind of fabricate passports to help other people be able to escape if they didn't have the legal ability to flee. So when she's in Palestine, she meets a man, she falls in love with him, and he steals all of her money. And he goes to Greece. She chases after him. She tries to recuperate her assets, and she can't find him. After that, she backpacks up through Yugoslavia into England. And at the time, England was closing its borders to Jewish refugees, so she wasn't allowed to stay. So a Jewish refugee group helps to pay for her ticket to leave, and she gets on a ship and comes to Cape Town, and she lands here in March of 1937. So she arrives basically broke with her camera. She gets an apartment on Adderley Street, and she turns this kind of one-bedroom small studio into a commercial studio. So she lives there, and then she also uses it to take portrait photographs and things. For a while later on, she'll work and do theater photography as a way to kind of make some extra cash. It was through her camera that she was able to make money. I think when she first arrived, she kind of started to get a sense of the racial politics and the things that were happening here. She was a bit shocked that the white supremacist world that she had left in Germany and in Berlin with the rise of Nazism, that those sort of echoes were here already in the late 1930s, early 1940s. This is before apartheid, right? But she's very anti-national party. She joins the left, which at the time here in Cape Town was filled with a lot of immigrants from all over the world, right? A lot of Jewish refugees come here and they have similar feelings to her, where they are seeing these sorts of identity politics replicated and they're opposed to them.
Back then, there was really no money in documentary work. So a lot of the photographs she made as part of that group was basically out of her interest in being a documentarian or wanting to produce something like that Photobook, for example.
I think it was more the artistry behind those pictures. She was quite relaxed about mixing with people. She photographed real people. She cared about people and the way they lived.
I think there was interest in kind of showing white voters what living conditions were actually like there. So Anne started going to take photographs on behalf really of the National Liberation League, who wanted to, on the one hand, reveal how horrible the living conditions were in Langa, but then on the other hand, to create these really honorific, beautiful portraits of the people that she was meeting. And Anne, in her images, was always pushing against stereotypes in that way and trying to create images that would undermine these kind of more visually repressive regimes that were coming about. She met Dora in the late 1940s. They would go to Genadendal, and I think at some point, Dora decided, I think we should do a project about this. Use the town or use this kind of missionary station as a microcosm to show the things that are happening in a kind of larger scope in South Africa. So Dora Taylor starts drafting this incredible introduction. Her and Anne get together and they decide to create a photo book. Fischer creates a series of portraits of the people that they interview and that they talk to.
But the impetus behind that book was this attempt to try to unite people across all races to vote against the National Party in the coming elections. And then they come back to Cape Town and they try to publish it with this company called the African Bookman. And then the company closes and she can't publish it.
They struggled so much and they tried so hard. And I think after that outlet was closed, there just wasn't really anywhere else to go with it.
And then the National Party comes to power and Fisher is like, I'm not gonna stay here and watch the same thing happen here that had happened in Germany. So she leaves and she goes to London. Even when she was in her 70s before she died, she's kind of saying how much this was something she wanted to be able to do.
Of course, it never actually happens and she does die. And here we are 30 years-ish after she's died and there still isn't a book on her. There was the intention and I think the disappointment that it hadn't come out and it couldn't have the impact they hoped it would have. Because this book was never printed or published and doesn't really circulate at all, the goal is to be able to kind of print out something like a kind of draft mock-up of how they might have intentionally intended the book to be, or even just kind of the draft typed manuscript pages that Dora had with her scribbles in her handwriting, and to be able to give a copy of it to her daughter, who's still alive, actually. Her daughter's been really active in kind of publishing some of Dora Taylor's older texts. So, like I mentioned, she was a literary critic, but she also wrote novels and things. And her daughters, after she died, were really intentional about trying to publish those to get them out. And this is one project that they haven't been able to get out yet. So hopefully we can help with that.